Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm the last speaker for today, and I will talk about the Hessdalen measurement campaign 2024 and also from this year. The outline is I will give some brief introduction about myself and Hessdalen. And then mainly I will talk about the brief introduction about myself. I'm Rainer Haseitl. I'm working at a particle accelerator in Darmstadt, GS Acquisition and Software. So I'm doing lots of data acquisition in my professional job. I joined Project Hessdalen early last year, and I'm in the technical team in my private time, I have to say. And I'm taking care of cameras, sensors, and the computers and everything technical in Hessdalen. For those of you who have never heard of it, maybe, Hessdalen is a small valley in Norway. It's around 2 hours away from Trondheim, which is a little bit south of the Arctic Circle. And there have been reported unexplained phenomena since at least the 1870s. There was a very high activity with lights in the sky, unknown, between 1981 and 1984. I will show 2 videos of that time period. And in 1983, a non-profit organization has been created, Project Hessdalen, and they tried and still try to work with scientific methods to explain all these kind of phenomena, what is going on. In 1998, a small research station, the so-called blue box, has been installed. I will show a picture later, which is running almost all the time since 1998. So I will show you 2 of the most famous sightings. This is from a camera on top of the blue box. It was 1999, so there's an analog camera recorded on a VCR recorder, quite a complex system. And it's looking roughly to the west into the valley, and what you can see, there is a light coming through. If you look at the single frames on your laptop on a big screen, it looks as if a small light is absorbed into it, and then the video stops because the system only recorded for a couple of seconds before it armed itself again. So, of course, back then they also saw lots of planes and other stuff, but this is unexplained to the day, what this object was. Here another very impressive video. From 2002 to 2019, there were every year so-called science camp. So the founders of Project Hessdalen, Erling Strand and Bjørn Gitle Hauge, they took lots of students or pupils out to the nature for a week or 2 weeks. They set up different camps on the mountains with cameras, with spectrographs and more equipment. I will show you in a minute. And then they were observing the sky. And if one of the camps saw something, then they immediately called the others and said, okay, look, we are looking in this direction. Can you also see something? And this video is from 2007. It's showing several lights appearing and then disappearing again. The video also has sound, and you can hear the excitement of the pupils in Norwegian telling, yeah, here, now we have it on video. And this is special because it was observed from 2 different locations. These are 2 slides from Erling Strand's talk. So they could triangulate where it happened. And they also had a radar system running from Italy. And they started to see radar signals even before they saw the light and even afterwards. And they also had cameras with a diffraction grating, so they could take the spectrum of these light. So these are very, very nice results. I have to say, in our days, the phenomena, they got rarer. So back then in 1981, 83, so there were multiple sightings per week. It was so regular that the tourists came to the valley, and the local people, they sold hot dogs to the people coming to witness this. So it was incredible. Nowadays, it's maybe 2 sightings a week, but of course, not everybody is reporting it. So all the inhabitants, sometimes it's normal for them, so they don't file a witness report on the website, or they don't tell anybody. So sometimes you only get to learn what is happening some years later. But we estimate maybe 2 sightings a week. So what did we do last year? I have 3 big topics. We had the magnetic sensors, and we had offline and online cameras. The magnetic sensors, I have one right here. The motivation for this was, besides of the lights, we get many reports of magnetic anomalies. So for example, people are telling us their compass is wrong. People are telling us their drone stopped working, or they won't even start at all. The story with this compass is, for example, that two people realized that their compass was off by 18 degrees at one day, and 2 days later it was normal again. North was again the north it should be. There are also reports about a zone, we call it the silent zone, which is avoided by animals. So there are hunters, and they say, yeah, when a bird is coming and almost flying above this zone, the birds are taking a 90-degree turn to not be above this zone. And so we thought, okay, maybe it is something magnetic. Let's try and find out. What I did then is I created the small magnetic logger. The main component is a magnetic field sensor. I have one right here. You can look at it afterwards. It's battery operated, so it's not online. You have to put it out and then you collect it again. And besides the magnetic sensor, we have an accelerometer to know if a sheep, for example, they're quite common there, tips the sensor, then not only the magnetic field changes, but also the accelerometer. We have a gyro for twisting rate, temperature sensor, and so on. They're battery operated, and they should run between 7 and 30 days with one set of batteries. We then thought, okay, maybe one sensor is not enough, so we built 49 sensors of these. It's all privately funded, and the cost of one locker is roughly 23 euros. So we had to take really care to use components which are manageable by cost. And then, of course, we had to decide, okay, where do we put them? So we put 5 of them to locations inside the whole valley, where, for example, this observation was made with this 18 degrees, but also to other parts in the valley where sightings have been reported in the past. With big battery packs, and also one of the locals helped me to change the batteries once, so they should have been running for 2 months. And then the sensor grid consisting of 30 independent sensors. This we set up in the so-called silent zone, so where the birds don't go in, at least some reports so. We calculated a grid with GPS coordinates with a 140-meter spacing, and we put the loggers out. Only for 1 week, because we have to collect all of them back. We don't want to leave anything in the nature which doesn't belong there. But the long-term loggers, I put new long-term loggers this year. But for the grid, we got everything back. Also, the measurement frequency, the sampling frequency was a question. So we selected 4 Hertz. It's always a trade-off between battery runtime and sampling frequency. So we hope with 4 Hertz, we can detect the sheep kicking the sensor. So in 2024, we did a very relaxing 6-hour, 45-minute deployment hike. So you can see me when we are putting down the sensors, we're writing down the GPS coordinates, the timestamp, everything. Then we split up that every one of us, we were 2, we're deploying half of the sensors because it takes some time. On the right side, you can see the valley with the sensors. Of course, you don't see them. We also put cameras to see if we catch something with the cameras, which might be also in the sensor data. So here are the preliminary results. I call them preliminary because stuff still can be done on the data, but that's what we found out so far. All of the 5 long-term loggers failed. So all of them had either totally corrupt data on the SD cards or partially corrupt data. I have some ideas why this is the case, but I tested these loggers for months and months in my home. They all worked fine with batteries removal, without shutting down everything. But the 5 long-term loggers, they didn't make it. For the grid loggers, all out of, except for 1, worked fine. And here you can see already typical data traces of the magnetometer, a little bit enlarged. You can see exactly when we switch them on. Of course, we handle them a little bit, then we put them in our cabin. And then a day later, we took all of them, did the hike, deployed them. This you can also clearly see. Then roughly 6 days, they were out in the field measuring. And then afterwards, we retrieved them and read out the data. And all but 1 measurement results look exactly like this. There's one which is a little bit different. This is that one. So you can see here one, but only one of the magnetic axis is shifting the magnetic field strength, which is quite unusual, because if you bump even a little bit into the sensors, you always influence all three magnetic axes. You cannot be so exact to only disturb one of them. Even if you take a magnet coming from exactly in front, for example, you see it on all the magnetic axes. Here only on one. I personally suspect maybe the sensor was going bad. Or maybe a combination, a sensor doing crazy stuff, and also maybe a tiny movement. Here, for example, it's enlarged only the magnetometer data again. So there's a shift by roughly 12 microtesla in 15 minutes on only one axis. And when I look on the other sensors, I see also a little bit in the data. So the accelerometer, it looks that maybe it shifted a little bit. Maybe the ground was very wet, or it was very rainy that day, and it went down a little bit. But still, on the magnetic axis, only one magnetic axis changed. So I don't know. The gyro has one enlarged data point, but only one. So I don't know yet. That's the only strange measurement we see on this magnetometer grid. What can be done further, and what I already did a little bit, for example, compare it to the intermagnet database to see if there were sunstorms or what the Earth's magnetic field did during that time period. I did start with it. I didn't see any specialities which happened during that time. We put out cameras to check if there was lots of rain, and maybe there's some connection between this. If anybody wants to have a look at the data, please talk to me afterwards. Second part is the offline cameras. So it's just a fancy word for you put some GoPros out and let it videotape either the sky or the valley. And then afterwards you check if you caught something. We have different kinds of cameras, different manufacturers. You get very, very nice time-lapse videos, of course. I will talk in a minute how I find any events in this time-lapse videos later. But of course, you also have the metadata. For example, many GoPro models have the GPS sensor. And so you can check if you run it for 24 hours, what does the GPS say? Is it always at the same position, or is it fluctuating more than usual? On the bottom left, you see one GPS plot or map with the positions from one video. One position is 50 meters off, but that's expected. So when you start it, it normally takes some time to find the correct position. And some cameras also have, for example, an accelerometer and magnetometer. So you can also look at these data. So if suddenly the magnetic field would change, in theory, you would also see it in these cameras. That's an example. There's an old sulfur mine in Hessdalen, and I put some cameras to the exit of that mine. The very small blue spot left of the middle is the other camera, so they were looking at each other. And believe it or not, I caught some non-human intelligence, just not the kind I was hoping for. So I got some visits from some cows, but they didn't touch my camera. Another result just from this year is that video. This was in the forest behind the blue box, the measuring station. And this puzzled us for 3 days, because I put the camera here in the forest, and then this light appeared. And what I did immediately is, okay, I checked at the map, is there something in this direction behind the forest? But it turns out the forest goes on for quite some while. There are maybe some houses a little bit in another direction, but exactly in the camera viewing direction, normally not. So the next day I went there with my compass and I walked a straight line, like 45 minutes, but I was still in the forest. It was not a very dense forest, but still forest. So I put again a few cameras the second day, and again we saw this light. And the third day I was there personally with another member, and we sat there, and when nightfall, we also saw it with our own eyes, and it was a vehicle in a cabin. Very far away behind the forest. I would have never expected to see it through like 500 to 600 meters of forest, but yeah, it was vehicles. One thing we did last year, which is very nice, is we put new cameras on the blue box. You can see it here. You now know why it is called the blue box. So there were many old analog or partially digital cameras, many of them not operating anymore. So we removed these and put 2 new ones. Also, the SkyCam system from the University of Würzburg is also on the roof of the blue box. We selected this model because it is very durable also in cold temperatures. It has 4K resolution and a high dynamic range. So hopefully the sensor will not blow out if it shows something very, very bright. The two cameras are recording 24/7. One camera produces roughly 45 gigabytes a day. And I will tell you in a second how I go through the videos. I have the data, the stacks of the videos since September last year. And then in November, we also started to keep all the original video files. And so far, the storage system is keeping up. If you need training data for anything artificial intelligence, we're happy to help. One word about audio before I come to the video. The cameras also have very bad microphones on them. But you can hear, for example, planes passing by, cars passing by. That's, for example, a helicopter. If there are loud bird calls, you can see it in the spectrogram of the audio. Okay, a short explanation. What do we do with all these video? We are stacking them to a single image. It's like an artificial long-time exposure. Maybe some of you heard of this already. So what we are doing, we have a 20-minute video chunks. We're going through the video frame by frame. And for each pixel position, we keep the brightest pixel of that position. So out of a 20-minute video, you get one single image, which you can see on the right. And then if there's a plane going through, you have a bright line with this plane. It's like a long-time exposure with the analog cameras before. I stack only every second frame, and that's why very fast movements are in a dashed line. So it's very easy to spot meteors, for example. And we do the exact same thing for the darkest part, for the darkest pixel. So if some dark object is flying around during the day, we also catch it. So here, for example, you can see a bird slowly approaching from the left, and you get a very nice track of the bird. So now I have some pictures. What do we see on these cameras all the time to set like the baseline, what is normal and what do we expect? We see lots of insects as well in the summer, in the daytime, of course, but also in the night or at nightfall, like moths, dragonflies, strange insects, which I don't know what it is. Of course, we see lots of birds. And sometimes these birds can even look a little bit strange. They can cover quite some distance without flapping their wings. And sometimes you really have to look twice because, yeah, it looks unusual, but when it starts flapping, then you know it's a bird. That's the bird from the stacking video. You can see it even has a lunch with him. Some more bird tracks. Tracks when they are circling in the hot air. They can also appear as bright dots if they have bright patches on their feathers, for example. And I have no idea what happened on that day. Sadly, I don't have the original video anymore, but in these 20 minutes, every bird of Hessdalen was in this camera frame. No idea. Of course, we have satellites and planes, lots and lots of them. So for example, this is a plane going through a cloud. You can see a plane is relatively slow, so it's not a dashed line, it's a continuous line going through. This is the moon in the middle, and the streak is like a condensation trail of a plane slowly dispersed in the wind. And you can see all other kinds going on, like the star trails. On the upper right, you can see a meteor also. Of course, we see Starlink. We also see light pillars. So that's a common phenomenon. When there are small ice crystals in the air, then bright lights create these pillars going up. Look quite impressive. And what I didn't know, they also can appear only a little bit higher above these lights. So it mustn't be the whole pillar visible. Of course, we have lots of car lights and also reflections on the camera lens. So there's at least one guy visiting Hessdalen with a yellow headlight on his car. These are all reflection of water droplets from the lens, and they also move and can give some really strange results when they move. That's, during the daytime. We see rain and snow, that's normally little white dots. And this is something which we can't explain right now. It mostly happens when there is rain. We have this white lines in the image that just appear in one single frame, and we don't know what it is. It's not cosmic particles. I have examples of this later if you want to see them. But these bright lines in the rain, when the sun is shining directly at the camera, we don't know. The cameras are running with 25 frames per second, so in 40 milliseconds. Looks unusual. I think it's not an insect. We catch lightning, of course. That's also very nice to see often. Lightning coming from the right. And the next picture I like a lot. I was pretty hyped in the night when I went through all these pictures through them. So we captured red sprites going up from the thundercloud. So that's also no UAP, but a known phenomenon. But they are quite rare. So I've never seen one with my bare eyes, just on the cameras. Meteors which explode at the end of their track. Also as video, for example, here, a little bit slowed down in a second. Oh. The northern lights, very beautiful and uncommon if you are in Germany. Also when you look to the south. This again is a little bit, maybe not a strange phenomenon, but we had to find out what it is. It was a satellite triplet. So very often you have satellite tracks, and quite usually also two satellites either visible at the same time or shortly after each other. But this time they were three satellites. And one member of our Discord community is pretty good at hunting down which satellites it could be. And it took him some days, but he's quite sure that he found three satellites which went in this direction of the sky at that moment. But at the beginning, it was a little bit unusual, and we were not sure what it is. And this last observation is our maybe most uncommon one. We don't know what it is. It doesn't look very spectacular, but at least it's the only time we observed something like this. So I looked at literally 100,000 of these pictures, but this is the only one this appeared. So that's the original video in original speed. And if you have a very fast eye, maybe you spot it. There it was. It's an infinite loop. Once again. There it was. Here are the single frames right out of the video. So there was no enhancement. These are not the stacks. That's the original single frames out of the video. Something is appearing in the sky. I will enlarge it a little bit later. Then it's down here, and then in front of the trees. And if you enlarge these three frames, it looks like this. It was very fast, like I said, like 25 frames per second is our camera rate. We did lots of speculation and also measuring, like where's the sun on that day? Is it a reflection to the sun? It's always possible that something out of the field of view of the camera is reflecting on the camera sensor. But we are not sure. Like I said, it's the only time we saw something in this form, and we still don't know what it is. I don't know if we will ever find out, but it was uncommon. No sound was special at that place. I'm almost done. So activities for this year. What we put into the blue box was an infrasound sensor, because there are many reports about very low-pitched but very intense sounds. So we put an infrasound sensor in. It's live streaming to the internet. Everybody can have a look at it. So if there would be some very loud or very low-pitched sounds, hopefully we should hear it. We also added a SDR antenna with a Raspberry Pi doing SDR and measuring the power in different frequency bands. But this was done by another team member, so I can't say much about it. But it's also running, and he is checking the data every time, and he's trying to correlate it with planes going over Hessdalen. A little bit outlook. So there are many great ideas already. For example, from Massimo Teodirani, which gave a talk in the Hessdalen field trip from IFEX last year, what could be done, like small measurement stations throughout the valley. I would love to have something like this. What's ongoing at the moment is we want solar-powered data logger, because if we just put them out for 1 week, yeah, it's not a long period of time. But with solar powered and 4G connectivity, you basically can have live data out of the valley. And the prototype is working on my balcony, but it needs a little bit more of electronics work to it. But if the sun is out, it's working fine. So it's streaming data to the internet, and I can check the magnetic values. We have one guy working on a LoRa mesh network, so as sort of alarming system. If somebody happens within all this area, we can get a message, and maybe we can tell the locals, hey, maybe watch out, or we can turn our pen-tilt zoom camera to that area. Yeah, and all sky cameras, I like cameras very much. I have some for test at home, and we want to put more all sky cameras over there. A medium-term goal is to have a UV camera, because there have been reports that UV was visible or measured before lights have seen, not in Hessdalen, at other places. But a modern UV camera is something which I really would love to see. Of course, I'm on my own here, so big thanks to the people of Hessdalen for reporting and for supporting us. Erling Strand was one of the founders of Project Hessdalen, so I'm really standing on shoulders of giants here. He has done lots of work. You can find lots of stuff on the new and old Hessdalen websites. Fred is the current CEO of Project Hessdalen. There are other researchers, there are other team members, and thanks to my wife that she allows me to do all this kind of stuff. 3 links to the old and the new website. On the old website, you can see lots of pictures and also the video. For example, the Blue Box video from 1999 is all available there with more analysis going on. The field reports, also the science camp reports are on a separate site. And also peer-reviewed research is done, as you can see in this last paper. And this is everything. Thank you very much.
Hello. Test. I don't know. So thank you very much. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Test. Yeah, it works.
Hi, you hear me?
Yeah.
I was asking myself if this phenomenon only occurs in that area, in Hessdalen, or if it's a phenomenon that occurs in other parts of Norway, but this is maybe a hotspot. Or did you measure any patterns that maybe lead to these phenomena?
So Hessdalen is definitely a hotspot, but also the valleys around it also report sightings. Also other areas in Norway, like 2 hours by car away, but the most sightings come from Hessdalen, it seems.
Okay, another question? If not, then I have 1 comment and 1 question. The question is, how did you synchronize the time stamps of the magnetometers? You had about 30 magnetometers there.
Yeah, I did it. So all of them have a real-time clock, of course, the chip with a battery operated. And there's like a manual button on these, and I was watching the atomic time on my laptop, pushing this button, and then I wrote down the exact time I pushed the button, and I later compared it with the timestamp on this measurement. And I get roughly a 1 second synchronization of the loggers with that.
Okay, maybe in future you are thinking of
GPS would be great, but
money and electrical power. Okay, and the comment is you have shown this car light on our SkyCam 6 camera. We very often have seen these light at the same location which you showed us.
Which one was
behind the trees? The car light.
The car light.
Behind the yeah, because many months ago we started to observing that light, and then after many days and weeks, I remotely came to the conclusion that it's a car behind the trees at the same location, I guess. So we can maybe check some of the videos which we have with your observation. Then it should be identical.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So maybe last question, yeah.
Do you collect only data from your detection systems or also from local witnesses and their reports?
Absolutely. All the local witnesses or tourists coming to the valley, So Fred put like report sheets in many of the cabins, or encouraging people to fill out, or also on the internet, like type in a form, a very easy form for first just who you are, what have you seen, and send. And people are doing it, the locals are doing it. But many reports or many sightings do not get reported. For example, I came back from Hessdalen last week, and just 1 week before, there was a sighting by a local, which we got by coincidence. And there was a big glowing cube flying for minutes through the valley outside of the field of view of our cameras, surrounded by some fog. And then the cube went down, disappeared, and the fog ring or the fog ball was there for some more time, and then it dispersed. But I mean, the locals, often they don't report it anymore, because one old guy which we met, he has over 150 observations. He is now 89 years old. What should he report again? Yeah, he doesn't care anymore. He is fascinated, and that's it. And also the tourists coming to the valley. So hopefully they know that they can do it. Sometimes they ask us later, and I can check on the cameras if there is something on them. But many sightings are unreported. But if they report, we write them down all. Yeah.
Thank you. Interesting.
Yeah, maybe I can make an addition to that. I have been there 2 times and have close contact to Erling, and he has shown me some of the places from different reports from the local people who are living there. And besides from such distance lights, there are really a lot of reports from people living there in the 80s especially, who has described really big objects, not distant far lights, but really big objects very close to them. And as he already told, so it was so much that they stopped reporting about them and talking about them.